They called her a thief for wearing a simple white dress in a luxury store. 30 minutes later, her billionaire husband's Rolls-Royce pulled up, and their world fell apart. Never judge a book by its cover. Watch till the end. Quick question. What would you do if this happened to you? Tell me in the comments, and stick around because the ending will blow your mind. And if you want more stories like this, the next one's even crazier.
The morning sun painted Rodeo Drive in golden hues, casting long shadows between the palm trees that lined Beverly Hills' most exclusive shopping district. Here, where million-dollar cars idled outside boutiques that charged more for a handbag than most people made in a year, appearance was everything. Status was currency, and judgment was swift. Des Lumières glittered like a jewel box at the heart of it all. Its marble floors, polished to mirror perfection, reflected crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow prisms across velvet-lined cases. This wasn't just a jewelry store. It was a temple of extravagance, where diamond tiaras whispered secrets to sapphire rings, and emerald bracelets held court over lesser gems. At the store's heart, bathed in a spotlight that made it glow like captured starlight, sat the crown jewel, a pink diamond necklace whose 18-carat centerpiece was flanked by flawless white diamonds. Valued at $12 million, it was more than jewelry. It was a statement, a dream, a piece of forever, crystallized in stone. But Des Lumières was more than beautiful. It was brutal. A gatekeeper of status where entry demanded a certain look. Designer labels, heavy jewelry, the invisible scent of old money that clung to the truly wealthy like expensive perfume. Outside, valets managed a parade of Bentleys and Lamborghinis, while the boutique's Instagram account, boasting over 1 million followers, showcased clients dripping in luxury like modern-day royalty. This was a world where appearance was currency, where your worth was measured in carats and zeros, where judgment arrived faster than champagne at a gallery opening. Into this glittering fortress walked Claire Monroe. At 36, she moved with the kind of quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was. Her white linen dress caught the faint breeze as the boutique's glass doors whispered open. Simple, flat sandals made no sound against the marble. No makeup adorned her face, yet she was radiant. Clear gray eyes that seemed to hold depths of kindness, blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun that spoke of efficiency rather than vanity. Her canvas tote bag, worn soft with use, held a notebook, a pen, and a faded photograph of her and Blake laughing on their wedding day 10 years ago. To anyone looking, Claire appeared to be exactly what she was, a woman who chose simplicity over showiness, substance over spectacle. What they couldn't see was the fortune tied to her name. Blake's e-commerce empire had made them billionaires, but Claire had chosen to step away from the nonprofit world to focus on quiet philanthropy. Her wealth was vast but private, her influence measured not in headlines, but in lives changed. Today she had come to Des Lumières with a single purpose: to see the pink diamond necklace, not to prove anything, not to make a statement, but to feel the weight of those diamonds in her hands as she considered buying it as a 10th anniversary gift for Blake, a symbol of their shared journey from struggling college students to partners in both love and purpose. She didn't need to prove she belonged here. She just wanted to shop. The boutique hummed with its usual quiet energy. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers, while a handful of clients, women in Chanel dresses, men in bespoke suits, examined treasures that cost more than most people's homes. The staff moved with practiced precision, their black uniforms and severe expressions making them look more like museum guards than salespeople. Claire approached the central display, her eyes drawn to the pink diamond's glow.
Even under the harsh boutique lighting, it was breathtaking. Not ostentatious, but elegant, timeless, perfect. Behind the counter stood Vanessa Halt, the boutique's head saleswoman. At 28, she was striking in a cold, calculated way. Black dress hugging her slim frame, blonde hair pulled into a severe updo that added years to her face, lips painted the color of fresh blood. Her eyes, pale blue and sharp as winter ice, flicked over Claire's appearance with the precision of a scanner. The linen dress, the canvas tote, the absence of obvious wealth markers. Vanessa's smile was thin as paper and twice as fragile. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone making it clear she doubted the answer would be yes. Claire's lips curved in a gentle smile, the kind that once convinced hardened board members to donate millions to causes they'd never heard of. "I'd like to see the pink diamond necklace, please." The request hung in the air like smoke. Around them, conversations grew quieter as heads turned toward the woman who dared to ask for something so obviously beyond her means. Vanessa's smile tightened until it resembled a scar. Her gaze raked over Claire's flat sandals, lingered on the canvas tote, took inventory of every simple choice Claire had made that morning. "That's a showcase piece," Vanessa said clearly, loud enough to turn heads, "reserved for clients of a certain standing, not just for window shoppers." The words hit like a slap, but Claire's composure never wavered. She had faced hostile boardrooms and skeptical investors. She had stood before crowds of thousands and convinced them to open their hearts and wallets for causes that mattered. She had weathered criticism and doubt and outright hostility from people who mistook her kindness for weakness. But this felt different. This was personal in a way that business never was. "I understand," Claire said softly, her voice steady despite the heat creeping up her neck. "I'd still like to see it. I can afford it." Vanessa's laugh was sharp as breaking glass, a sound that sliced through the boutique's refined atmosphere like a knife through silk. Several staff members looked up from their tasks, drawn by the promise of drama. "Do you even know how much it costs? Or are you just here for the air conditioning?" Nearby, a client in a fur-trimmed coat, Diana Wass, social media influencer, whose entire identity was built on displaying wealth she barely possessed, chuckled behind her manicured hand. "She must think this is a thrift store," she whispered to her companion, a man in an expensive suit whose cufflinks probably cost more than most people's rent. "Bold," the man whispered, loud enough for Claire to hear. "Coming in here with no appointment, no style, no class." The boutique's atmosphere shifted like weather before a storm. Eyes turned toward the woman who didn't belong. Voices dropped to whispers that somehow felt louder than shouting. Claire found herself at the center of a circle she hadn't asked to join, a spotlight she'd never wanted. But she stood her ground. As Claire remained by the necklace display, trying to maintain her dignity while Vanessa's hostility grew more obvious, the group of high-profile clients nearby began to take notice. Led by Diana Wass, they openly dissected Claire's appearance like vultures picking at a carcass. "Look at that dress," Diana said loudly, her voice dripping with practiced scorn. The group erupted in laughter, their diamond earrings catching the light as they pulled out phones to capture the moment. Lauren Tate, a tech heiress whose startup had made her rich enough to shop here but not classy enough to shop with grace, added her own commentary. "I bet she's here to case the joint," she said, her phone already recording. "Check her bag." The suggestion rippled through the group like wildfire. Someone tossed a coin at Claire's feet, the metallic ping against marble echoing through the suddenly silent boutique. "For your bus fare home," Diana smirked, her social media-trained instincts already calculating how many likes this humiliation would generate. The taunts grew bolder, the phones came out in earnest,
and the boutique's other patrons joined in with the kind of pack mentality that turned ordinary people into monsters. They were filming now, posting to private group chats with captions like "Boutique Bum Alert" and "Security should check her bag." Claire's hands tightened on her tote, her gray eyes burning with restrained pain, but she didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, didn't demand to speak to a manager or threaten lawsuits or pull out her phone to call Blake. She just turned, her sandals silent against the marble, and began walking toward the doors. But the humiliation was not over. As Claire moved toward a side display, hoping to browse quietly until she could figure out how to escape with some shred of dignity intact, the boutique's security guard stepped into her path. Victor was a large man whose uniform strained against his chest, whose radio crackled with importance, whose presence was designed to intimidate. "Ma'am, I need to see inside that bag." The request stopped every conversation in the boutique. Phones came out in earnest now, dozens of cameras focused on Claire as she stood under the crystal chandeliers, public humiliation complete. Claire's gray eyes widened, but she calmly opened her tote, revealing nothing more threatening than her notebook and pen. The same notebook she'd used to plan charity events that had raised millions for causes across the country. The same pen she'd used to sign checks that had funded schools and shelters and scholarship programs. Victor smirked, shaking his head like he'd discovered exactly what he'd expected to find. Nothing, which somehow proved everything. "Keep it where I can see it," he warned, his tone making guilt sound inevitable. Around them, clients whispered with the satisfaction of people who'd been proven right. "Told you she was trouble." Classic thief behavior. "Someone should call the police." Their phones captured every second, every angle, every moment of Claire's degradation. The videos were already uploading to social media, tagged with hashtags like "shop thief" and "boutique scammer." Each share was a public crucifixion. Claire kept her composure, even as the walls closed in around her. The guard hovered close enough that she could smell his cologne, his boots heavy on the marble as he followed her every step. The humiliation was suffocating, a deliberate spectacle designed to break her spirit. But Claire Monroe had survived worse than this. She'd built a nonprofit from nothing, had faced down politicians who tried to defund her programs, had stood strong when critics questioned her motives and methods. She wouldn't break now. Not here. Not for them. As Claire finally moved toward the boutique's entrance, adjusting her tote and trying to maintain what dignity she had left, Diana Voss called out from across the showroom. "Still here, sweetheart?" Diana's voice was honey over broken glass. "The pawn shop's down the street." Her group erupted in fresh laughter, their phones capturing every moment as Diana reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled tissue. "For your tears!" she sneered, tossing it at Claire's feet like scraps to a beggar. The tissue landed on the polished marble with a whisper that somehow sounded louder than thunder. Around them, other clients began chanting in sing-song voices, "No diamonds! No diamonds! No diamonds!" Ethan joined in from behind his counter, his wave mocking and theatrical. The security guard chuckled into his radio, probably sharing the joke with whoever was listening on the other end. Claire's jaw tightened, her hands trembling slightly as she looked down at the tissue by her feet. For a moment, just a moment, the mask slipped and something raw and hurt flickered across her face. Then she bent down, picked up the tissue, and placed it carefully in her tote. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent boutique. The words were simple, but they hit the room like a thunderclap. There was something in Claire's tone, not sarcasm, not anger, but a dignity so pure it made everyone else's behavior look monstrous by comparison. The laughter died in their throats, but the damage was done. The videos were already viral, spreading across platforms with captions like "Shop Thief" and "Boutique Scammer." Each share was another nail in the coffin of Claire's reputation, another stranger laughing at her pain. Claire walked to the exit, her white linen dress catching the breeze from the air conditioning, her sandals whispering against marble that had witnessed 1,000 small cruelties, but rarely one so public, so complete. Vanessa followed her to the door, her heels clicking like a countdown. "Don't come back," she called out, her voice carrying across the boutique like a final verdict. "Unless you've got a real budget." The words echoed off the crystal and marble, drawing fresh laughter from staff and clients alike. Ethan added his own farewell, shouting, "Try the mall next time," while the security guard muttered something about, "think she'd grab and run." Claire's fingers tightened on her tote, but she didn't look back. She stepped through the glass doors onto Rodeo Drive sidewalk, where the California sun felt harsh against her face, and the sounds of traffic seemed muted after the boutique's orchestrated cruelty. She pulled out her phone with hands that barely trembled and dialed Blake's number. "Hey, beautiful," his warm voice filled her ear immediately, the same tone he'd used when they were broke college students, dreaming of a future they could barely imagine. "How's the shopping going?" Claire opened her mouth to explain, then closed it. How could she tell this man who'd conquered boardrooms and built empires that his wife had been humiliated by teenagers in expensive suits? How could she admit that all their money, all their success, all their carefully built life meant nothing when faced with strangers who judged worth by appearances? She started, then stopped. Around her, Beverly Hills continued its relentless pursuit of perfection, but she felt separate from it now, marked by what happened inside those glass doors. "Claire, are you okay?" She could hear the shift in his voice, the way his attention sharpened when he sensed something wrong. After 10 years of marriage, Blake could read her silences better than most people could read words. They wouldn't show me the necklace. I'm okay. Just let me know when you can meet me." There was a pause, and in that silence, Claire could almost hear Blake's mind working, processing what she wasn't saying, understanding the weight behind her careful words. "I'm coming now," and his voice carried something Claire had only heard a few times before, when a competitor had tried to steal their biggest client, when a journalist had written lies about their charity work, when someone had made the mistake of threatening something Blake held dear. "You don't have to—" "Where are you?" "Dia Lumiere on Rodeo Drive. But Blake, please don't make a scene. I just want to go home." Another pause, then softer but somehow more dangerous. "Stay there. I'll be right there." The line went dead, leaving Claire standing on the sidewalk with her phone in her hand and the weight of what was coming settling over her like storm clouds. Inside Dia Lumiere, the staff had returned to their usual tasks, the drama already becoming a story to share at happy hour. Vanessa adjusted her dress, smirking to Ethan as she counted the commission she'd earned from Diana Voss's latest purchase. "Can you believe her nerve?" she said, her voice bright with the satisfaction of a job well done. "Walking in here like she belonged?" Ethan chuckled, wiping down a display case with theatrical precision. "She learned her place, though. Won't be seeing her again anytime soon." Around them, the boutique hummed with its usual energy. Diana Voss posted a photo of her new emerald bracelet with the caption, "Dia Lumiere vibes, only the best belong here." The comment section filled with likes and hearts, the boutique's aura of exclusivity polished to a mirror shine. But 30 minutes later, that polished calm shattered like crystal against stone. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop in front of the glass doors, its engine purring so softly it seemed to whisper secrets to the street. The valet stationed outside froze, his hands fumbling with keys as he recognized the car. Not just expensive, but powerful.
The kind of vehicle that belonged to people who didn't just have money, but wielded influence like a weapon. Blake Monroe was the CEO of Monroe Ventures, an e-commerce empire that powered half the online retail in North America. His name was a fixture in Forbes and Fortune, his face familiar from Davos panels and congressional hearings, but he was also a ghost in public, preferring to wield his influence from behind the scenes, his rare appearances making them all the more impactful. Today, he'd left the most important board meeting of the quarter because his wife had needed him. Claire stepped out of the Rolls-Royce behind him, her white linen dress unchanged, her gray eyes calm despite everything that had happened. They approached the boutique's entrance, not hurried, not dramatic, but with the kind of inevitable purpose that made the universe seem to hold its breath. The boutique's doors swung open, as if the building itself was bowing. The change in atmosphere was immediate and total. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Glasses clinked to counters. Someone's phone clattered to the marble floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the sudden silence. Vanessa's practiced smile vanished as if it had never existed. Behind her, Ethan's polishing cloth dropped from nerveless fingers. Diana Voss's emerald bracelet clicked against her champagne flute as her hand began to tremble. Blake didn't look at any of them. His green eyes swept the boutique with the precision of a general surveying a battlefield, taking in every detail, cataloging every face, memorizing every person who would need to answer for what happened to his wife. When he spoke, his voice was low and lethal, each word dropping into the silence like stones into still water. "Is the employee who insulted my wife still working here?"
The question hung in the air like a blade suspended over necks. Around the boutique, clients froze with their phones halfway to their ears, their social media posts forgotten in the face of something far more immediate and dangerous. Diana Voss's bracelet continued its nervous clicking. The pop star in the sequined jumpsuit backed toward the far wall, her glitters suddenly seeming garish under the crystal chandeliers. Even the security guard stepped back, his hand moving away from his radio as if the device might incriminate him. From the back office came the sound of hurried footsteps, and Giovanni Ducas, the boutique's owner, rushed onto the sales floor. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled, vest askew, face pale, hands trembling as he recognized the man standing in his store. "Mr. Monroe," Giovanni stammered, bowing slightly in a gesture that would have seemed ridiculous under normal circumstances. "Please, there must be some misunderstanding." Blake's gaze snapped to him, and Giovanni's words died like flowers in frost. "You let your staff accuse my wife of stealing. You let them humiliate her in front of your clients. You let them treat her like garbage because she chose to dress simply." He turned to face Vanessa, who seemed to shrink with each word, her severe updo beginning to unravel as if her confidence was literally falling apart. "You," Blake continued, his green eyes locked on Vanessa's pale blue ones. "You told her she wasn't welcome, that she didn't belong. You made assumptions about her worth based on her clothes." Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Her authority, her arrogance, her carefully constructed superiority, all of it dissolved under Blake's stare like sugar in rain. Claire stepped forward then, her tote still in her arms, her voice soft but carrying clearly through the silent boutique. "I don't need them to know who I am," she said, her eyes meeting Giovanni's. "I just needed to be treated with respect, like any other customer who walks through your doors." The words fell into the silence, like truth into lies, simple and devastating in their honesty. Blake gestured almost casually to a young woman in a navy blazer who'd entered behind them, Laia, his personal assistant, whose tablet was already glowing with open banking applications. "The necklace," Blake said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "Now." Laia's fingers flew across the screen, initiating a bank transfer that would have made most people dizzy. $12 million, clearing in seconds, with the kind of efficiency that only came from having banks compete for your business.
Giovanni fumbled with the display case, his hands shaking so badly he could barely work the locks. The pink diamond necklace seemed to glow brighter as he lifted it, as if it understood it was finally going to someone who deserved it. Blake took the necklace with movements that were deliberate and gentle, turning to Claire with the same careful attention he'd shown on their wedding day. He stepped behind her, his hands steady as he placed the diamonds around her neck, the pink stones settling against her collarbone like it had been waiting its entire existence for this moment. The necklace transformed her, not because of its value, but because of what it represented: a husband's love, a wrong made right, a moment of justice in a world that too often rewarded cruelty. "Now," Blake said, his voice quiet but resonant enough to carry to every corner of the boutique, "she doesn't have to ask anyone for permission." The words hit the room like a physical force. Each syllable was a verdict, a judgment, a final statement that reframed everything that had happened in the past hour. The boutique's silence was deafening. Clients stared with expressions ranging from shame to shock to dawning horror as they realized they'd just witnessed their own disgrace. Staff members looked down at their hands, their feet, anywhere but at the couple standing in their midst like living proof that dignity couldn't be bought or sold. Vanessa's face had drained of all color, her heels unsteady against the marble she'd walked with such confidence just minutes before. Ethan's hands trembled as he tried to busy himself with meaningless tasks, his mockery replaced by the kind of fear that came from realizing you'd just made the worst mistake of your career. "Mr. Duca," Blake said, turning to the boutique owner whose face had gone ashen, "I assume you'll be addressing this situation appropriately." It wasn't a question. Giovanni looked around his boutique, at Vanessa, whose cruelty had started this disaster, at Ethan, whose mockery had made it worse, at Diana and her group, whose phones had turned private humiliation into public spectacle. "Vanessa," Giovanni said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you're fired. Pack your things and leave now." The words fell like an executioner's axe. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, tears beginning to well in her eyes as the reality of her situation hit home. In the space of an hour, she'd gone from queen of her domain to unemployed, her reputation shattered, her future uncertain. No one moved to help her. No one offered comfort or support. The same people who'd laughed at Claire's humiliation now turned away from Vanessa's, as if shame might be contagious. But the reckoning had only just begun. Within hours of Blake and Claire's departure, a junior staff member, horrified by what they'd witnessed and disgusted by their colleagues' behavior, leaked the boutique's security footage to a celebrity gossip website. The video exploded across the internet like wildfire. The video hit 20 million views in the first 6 hours, spawning thousands of reaction videos, think pieces, and social media posts. Hashtags Justice for Claire and Linen Lady trended worldwide as people shared their own stories of being judged by appearance. TikTok exploded with recreations and commentary. Instagram Reels looped the moment Blake placed the necklace around Claire's neck. His words, "Now she doesn't have to ask," became a rallying cry for anyone who'd ever been made to feel small. Dea Lumiere's carefully cultivated reputation crumbled overnight. Their Yelp page was flooded with one-star reviews. "Elitist garbage," read one. "Boycott this place," demanded another. Reservations were canceled. High-profile clients distanced themselves. The boutique that had built its identity on exclusivity found itself excluded from the very social circles it had courted. Vanessa's personal reckoning was swift and merciless. Her LinkedIn profile was mocked, her modeling portfolio canceled, her Instagram flooded with comments calling her out for her cruelty. Brand partnerships evaporated, job prospects vanished, her name became synonymous with everything wrong with luxury retail culture. Ethan fared no better. His retail career ended overnight, his professional reputation destroyed by 30 seconds of video that showed him at his worst. The Beverly Hills retail scene was small and interconnected, word traveled fast, and forgiveness came slowly, if at all. Diana Voss's influencer empire collapsed like a house of cards.
Her emerald bracelet post was buried under comments like, "You laughed at Claire," and "This is karma." Follower counts plummeted, endorsement deals disappeared, brands that had once courted her attention now avoided her like a toxic asset. Lauren Tate's tech startup lost $20 million in funding after investors, citing her toxic behavior, pulled out of the deal. Her TikTok account was suspended for hate speech. Her reputation in Silicon Valley, built on connections and appearances, crumbled as quickly as it had been constructed. But perhaps the most significant consequence was the coalition that formed in response to the video. Former Dea Lumiere clients, inspired by Claire's grace under pressure, launched a boycott that spread across social media like lightning. Their open letter, signed by over 200 high-profile names and published in Vogue, condemned the boutique's elitism and praised Claire as a beacon of dignity in a world that too often mistakes cruelty for sophistication.
The legal consequences followed quickly. A class action lawsuit, backed by Monroe Ventures' legal team, was filed against Dea Luminaire for discriminatory practices. The suit cited not only Claire's treatment, but testimonies from former employees about systemic bias and from other customers who'd faced similar humiliation. Court documents detail the defendants' actions in devastating clarity. Vanessa's fashion blog collapsed under the weight of negative publicity. Ethan's name became unsearchable on professional networks. Giovanni faced a $10 million fine and watched his boutique chain lose major investors faster than he could find new ones. The lawsuit settlement funded anti-discrimination training for over 1,000 retail workers, with Claire's newly formed Lumiere Fund overseeing the program. Social media celebrated the verdict with hashtags like Diamond Justice trending as users posted messages like, "They judged her dress, now they're jobless." But Claire wasn't finished. A week after the necklace incident, she stood at a press conference in a simple navy dress, the pink diamond necklace notably absent, her canvas tote resting on a chair nearby. Facing a crowd of reporters, her gray eyes steady and bright, she announced the creation of the Lumiere Fund, a nonprofit seeded with $12 million, the exact value of the necklace. This fund, she said, her voice clear and strong, will support women facing discrimination in elite workplaces, especially those judged for their appearance or background. No one should be made to feel less than human because of what they wear, where they shop, or how much money they have. The crowd erupted in applause, cameras flashing, as reporters scrambled to capture every word. The announcement trended globally, with Lumiere Fund eclipsing even the original Linen Lady hashtag as people shared stories of their own experiences with discrimination and judgment. The fund's impact was swift and far-reaching. Within months, it had trained 500 women in leadership skills, funded legal aid for workplace harassment cases, and partnered with universities to study bias in luxury retail. Claire oversaw every detail personally, her notebook filled with ideas for outreach programs, her tote a constant presence at board meetings. Blake supported her quietly, his Rolls-Royce parked outside fund offices during planning sessions, but it was Claire's vision and heart that drove the mission forward. She read every letter sent to the fund, hundreds of them from women sharing stories of being dismissed, mocked, or underestimated because of their appearance, and each one strengthened her resolve to create lasting change. The pink diamond necklace, meanwhile, found a new home in a museum, on loan from the Monroe family. It became a symbol not of wealth, but of resilience, not of status, but of the power of standing up for what's right. School groups visited it, learning about dignity and respect. Business students studied the case as an example of how corporate culture could change overnight. Dea Luminaire never recovered from the scandal. 6 months after the incident, it shuttered its Rodeo Drive location permanently. The crystal chandeliers went dark, the marble floors echoed empty, and the display cases sat vacant, a monument to the consequences of confusing cruelty with class. Giovanni Duca retired from the jewelry business, his name forever associated with one of retail's most infamous discrimination cases. The building that had once housed his flagship store was converted into a community center, funded in part by the Lumiere Fund, where workshops on respect and dignity were offered free to retail workers across the city. Claire and Blake celebrated their 10th anniversary quietly at home in their modest Bel Air bungalow. She wore her original white linen dress. He wore his black suit, no tie. They danced in their garden as the city lights twinkled below them, the pink diamond necklace just a memory they didn't need to validate their love. Claire's canvas tote sat on their kitchen table, holding a new photograph, this one from her speech at the Lumiere Fund launch, her smile radiant with purpose. The world knew her now not as a billionaire's wife, but as a force for change, someone who'd turned humiliation into hope and used her pain to build something beautiful. The woman in the white linen dress had taught the world a lesson that money couldn't buy. The true wealth isn't measured in carats or bank balances, but in how we treat each other when we think no one important is watching. Claire Monroe didn't need diamonds to shine. She was the light. And in a world that too often mistakes appearance for worth, cruelty for sophistication, and money for meaning, that light blazed bright enough to change everything. If this story moved you, remember that every person you meet is carrying their own invisible battles, their own hidden worth, their own capacity for both pain and grace. The next time you see someone who doesn't fit your expectations, ask yourself, what would Claire do? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply choose kindness over judgment, dignity over cruelty, and love over the easy laughter that comes at someone else's expense. If this story touched you, the next one will blow your mind too. Tap the screen and watch what happened when a poor janitor shocked an entire luxury hotel. Trust me, you won't see the twist coming.